Hello, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just waiting for some attendees to arrive, and then we'll be right with you. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be with you shortly. We're just waiting for a few more attendees to arrive. I see them rolling in now, so it shouldn't be too long. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm thrilled to be here for another episode of Tea at 3 on Wednesdays, or a glass of wine if you prefer, on such a beautiful day out there. Today, we're going to talk about cruising, but before we begin, I'd like to do a few housekeeping items, and that would be that this session will be recorded for those that registered and weren't able to attend, or if you know other people that would be interested in our conversation on cruising today, you can forward it to them. After it is recorded, it will be sent out to you in an email. And the other thing is that anyone that's listening today will be entered in our draw for a $500 travel voucher that we'll be drawing for in June. Any of our webinars, when you attend week after week, your name goes in for that draw. So it's one more ballot in the box for a chance to win. If you have any questions today, and today is particularly important for questions because we're talking about cruising and all of those things that people don't know about. So if you have any questions at all, type them in the question box and we will answer them throughout our presentation today, or near the end if we don't get to them all immediately. And the purpose for today's conversation, my guest today is Donna Williams, one of our great tour directors that's been with us for many years. And we get a lot of people asking questions about cruising. They're not familiar with cruising. And so we thought, I guess it was Donna's idea, that we get together and answer some of those basic questions around cruising. And for me, I was kind of, having worked for Atlantic Tours for 35 years and for Atlantic Tours being around for so many years, we're the motor coach experts and the group touring experts. And so we really never dabbled much into cruising, but as the years went on, people were asking us to do that. And a number of years ago, I decided to host my first cruise, and that was a cruise to Alaska. And that was kind of my introduction into this. And I went not knowing what to expect. It exceeded my expectations, and I really, really enjoyed it. And that was kind of surprised because I had myself kind of thinking I wouldn't like cruising as much as I do our typical motor coach tours. And so today I thought I'd give you some of the reasons why cruising is a great option to our standard types of group trips, which are usually on motor coaches. We're going to talk about river cruising today, as well as big ship cruisings and the difference between the two. And as you can see in the visual you're seeing there, that's a river cruise, a very small ship. As you can see, we have a preferred partner, AMA Waterways. We believe them to be the best on the rivers. I don't think there's any bad river cruising, but they have been great to work with. They were revolutionary in the business. They've been around as a company around 20 years, family owned, a similar concept to Atlantic Tours. And I guess I should reintroduce myself. If we have some new people on today, I'm Richard Arnold, the Director of Fun and President of Atlantic Tours. And my guest that's going to be popping in here shortly is Donna Williams, one of our great tour directors. But river cruising, unlike big ship cruising, has about 140 people on board. So that ship you're seeing there with the three decks and then the upper deck, which is the open deck. It's one half of the ship is kind of our living area, and the other half of the ship are the accommodations and rooms. So that's a river cruise. And a big ship cruise, our partner that we prefer to work with has been Norwegian Cruise Lines. And then they have a brand also called Oceania Cruises. the it would be premium to Norwegian. And so the difference as are subtle. I mean, they're both excellent. And the ships range from a couple thousand people up to over 4,000 people on board. So we're talking apples and oranges when it comes to river and big ship cruising. So without further ado, I think I'll turn it over to Donna, and we can begin with the questions, and then we'll go into some of the cruising itineraries available at the end of our presentation. So Donna, over to you, and thank you for being part of this today and coming up with the idea.
Thank you, Richard. And the reason, let's say hello to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. And the reason that I wanted to do this webinar with Richard is because a lot of times coming back, I'm a tour director, and a lot of times coming back from various tours, traveling along on our way back to home, people have questions about what tours we have coming up. So we talk about the different motor coach tours we offer, and also about cruises. And I realized a lot of people had never done a cruise before. I have not, and had a lot of questions. And I started writing them down, keeping track of them to ask Richard so that I would give correct information. And he's hosted a number of cruises everywhere, so he's the information person. He has all the answers. So I thought it would be nice that we did the webinar today to get some of these questions answered. I've made a list, as well as people calling into the office to Peggy and so on, and she's made a list, and I've got some of those questions here today, and also some questions that have come in from people knowing that we're doing this webinar today. So, and if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to submit them, and we'll get those answered for you today. So should I start?
Absolutely, Donna.
Okay, so question number one. When people call and they book a cruise through Atlantic Tours and to travel with you as a hosted cruise, do we fly and board the ship together as a group, or do we arrive individually on board, or how does that work?
Well, generally, everything, being the group tour experts, I mean, what we do is we plan all of the variables that are needed. So generally what we do when we do a group cruise, if we're putting it on our website more than a year in advance, you may not have the air included, but we plan to include it. The way the airlines work is we can't really book group space until about 11 months prior to it happening. Prior to COVID, we used to estimate airfares and build them right into our packages, but not knowing how airfares are going to look in the future. And a lot of cruises, what we've done is we have the cruise price and we'll add the airfare later once we get the group space. But our intention is for us all to depart together, generally from Halifax, and we will go to the cruise destination, because often we will add pre-nights or pre-land packages to the cruise themselves. It's never been in my recommendation for anyone traveling on a cruise to arrive the day the cruise is departing, because you don't want to wave goodbye to the cruise ship should something happen with your flight. So normally I like to go at least one day in advance of the cruise to stay there. And lots of destinations that we're going, there's nothing for that particular destination included in the cruise either. Often it's the gateway to get on the ship and the gateway to get off the ship if it's not an open jaw cruise itinerary. So, often we'll include some sightseeing. For example, when we did our cruise a number of years ago from New York to New Orleans, we flew in and did an overnight and saw a little bit of New York City before we get on the cruise ship. But I guess to answer your question, the plan on our group hosted trips is for us all to go together. And if you're not departing out of Halifax, if you're somewhere else in Atlantic Canada, like New Brunswick or whatever, we can also perhaps make your flight match us at another destination. Often we're flying through Toronto or Montreal, so sometimes we can organize your flight to fly from Fredericton or St. John's, Newfoundland, get us into Toronto all at the same time, and then we'll fly from Toronto as a group down to where we're departing from. But generally, we do that. We also always offer you the option, if you don't want the pre-arrangements or whatever, to join us on the day that we're departing. But we really try to make everything worry-free right from the start. We have a lot of single travelers that join us on our cruises. So those are, one of the reasons for choosing to do it with us is that they are with other people and someone's going to look after all those details. And with me leaving next week to go to France on a river cruise to Bordeaux, France next Wednesday, there's lots of questions. And right now with, travel situations being what they are, everyone is thrilled to be traveling together and to maneuver the landscape as a group as opposed to individuals. But we can sell you any cruise anytime as an individual and make whatever arrangements you want. But today we're talking predominantly the group cruising.
Well, that answers that question, and certainly will put a lot of minds at ease. I've had, as you just mentioned, a lot of single travelers that are, oh, we'd love to do it. We'd love to take a cruise, but we wouldn't know where to go or where to meet. We'd be scared we'd miss the ship. I mean, they're nervous. They've never done it before. So this way, you're going to be there. You're going to be looking after them, or someone else from Atlantic Tours with them to take them every step of the way. So that's certainly.
And I guess a natural question from that, Donna, you haven't asked it yet, but I'm sure you will, is the biggest question I always get is, what does single cruising look like from a pricing perspective compared to, like everything else in life? To me, so to go a little bit into that, if you're on a river cruise, for example, it all depends on the category of cabin. AMA, once again, is very generous in their offerings for singles, in the fact that a normal single supplement is about 25% more expensive than a double. So you're not paying on traditional cruising, on big ship cruising, normally going to pay double the price for your cabin. So, and people say, well, why am I being charged more as a single? I said, well, it's no different than when you go to any hotel in your community or when you're traveling. A normal hotel price, if it's $200, if there's two of you traveling, it's $100 each. If there's one of you traveling, it's $100 or $200. That was the cost of the room from the start. So you just have no one to split it with. But with AMA Waterways at the category E and D level, often it can be only a 25% surcharge. And then when you go to different levels on the ship, it would increase up to about 50% more than the cost of the regular cabin category. And even with AMA on a number of the departures, if you get your name in early, if you book early with me, sometimes we can get a single supplement at no surcharge. So you pay the same as you would if you were traveling two people. So you can get the cabin with no additional charge. And I always say, time is your friend. Now on large ship cruising, and once again, I'm speaking on behalf of Norwegian and Oceania, there's a number of options available depending on which ships we're on. The traditional standard was double, as I said, double the price for a single. But as the newer ships are being built, and they recognize, like I do, the number of solos interested in cruising and doing other touring, they have come up with a whole section on some of their new ships called the solo section. It's like a ship within a ship in that respect, in the fact that all of the single accommodations are in one section of the ship. Accessing the single accommodations are only for those staying in that section. You have your own room. They're all interior rooms, so there's no exterior, but very well laid out and designed. They even have windows to give you the illusion that there's a window there. And so there's even additional activities for those solo travelers. And once again, you don't have to pay any supplements on those cabins. So it allows you to go on the cruise paying what you would if you were splitting with someone else. And I always say, because people will often ask, can you share us with someone else that might want to share a room on your tours or on the cruises? Once again, we're not a matchmaker or an organizer for putting people together, but if someone does request a share, what we will do is we'll mark it in our system, and if someone else requests a share, we put you in contact with one another and you decide if you want to travel together. But I always say, if you're used to living alone and staying alone, why do you want to go on vacation and share a room with someone else if you can get a similar kind of accommodation for a very similar kind of price, because to me, it's hard to change your sleeping habits and those kind of things. And it doesn't matter which cruise ship you're in or hotel room you're in, they're not large in size to get away from one another should it not work out. So on those shares, what we do is we have you generally on tours, pay single, and if it works out, then you would get your refund at the end of it. So like I said, lots of opportunities on cruises now for the singles or solos, as we prefer to call them, to join us and not have to find a roommate if they don't want to.
Perfect. And that's really good to know. How much luggage am I allowed? And what is the procedure for luggage handling?
Well, like all of our trips with Atlantic Tours, luggage is included in your pricing. And because of the size of the ship's rooms, again, all of your trips will include one large suitcase and a carry-on and a personal item. So that's the normal if you are a person that overpacks and needs more than that. And cruising, it doesn't matter which cruise line you go on. If you read anything about it, is they're always talking about not overpacking. In fact, everything you choose should be able to be coordinated with 2 or 3 other things. So they say, lay out your packing items and then divide it in half, and then even take a few more pieces away, because I'm a terrible overpacker. And many of these cruises, I pay for the extra suitcase to go, and at the end of the day, I have way too much stuff. So everyone does get the one suitcase, large suitcase.
Okay. What about different room types, and does deck location matter? And how does all of this affect the price? I suppose
once again, this would be differentiated if you're going on a river cruise with only 70 cabins, as I mentioned, or a big ship cruise. On a river cruise, there are a number of categories starting with E and going up to A, and then there's suites as well. And E's and D's on river cruises are fixed window, so you don't have any ability to open the window, and they would be the ones you see in the picture there down near the waterline. Nice size windows, 2 of them in your room, great opportunity for light, same kind of spacing. The rooms are all fairly similar in size on a river cruise. And then you move from the fixed windows into the French balcony, which would be like a patio door where the whole wall kind of pushes aside, and you can have fresh air and look out, and you have a couple nice seats with that little bar that goes across with the French balcony. And AMA was famous for the outside balconies, the twin balcony ships. So if you move to category C is the French balcony, category B and A are the dual balconies on most of the ships, where you'd have an outside patio space as well as the inside French door. So both are available there, and the same would qualify for suites. That'd be the twin balcony. Once again, it's a matter of preference. Great choices. If you go to the big ship cruising, once again, you would deal with the lead-in cabin being an inside cabin, and then a fixed window, and then you would move into balcony and club balcony. And once again, I'm talking about Norwegian cruise lines. And then there's varying categories in every one of those segments, depending on where you're located on the ship. So if you're Atlantic Tours, when we book our group space on any of the big ship cruises, we always think that everyone wants balcony. And so we automatically secure that our cabin category as balcony, and we do mid-ship balcony. And what I like about mid-ship balcony, you're in the center of the ship, easy access to the stairwells and the elevators. And depending on the size of the ship that we're on, it could be 20 decks. So you could be a lot of the common spaces might be located on deck 6 or 7. Like your casinos and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. And as you move up to the upper decks is where you get the pool and sun decks and all of that. But most of the cabin categories would be, 7 through 13 or 14. And once again, it's going to depend on where you are on the ship. Like I said, we choose midship balcony, but if you have a different preference, we can always switch that at the time of booking. And midship balcony would be available on each deck. And the category, once again, would be the same. So it really doesn't matter which deck you're on. The pricing would be the same in each of those categories, depending on if you're in a BA, is what our normal category choice would be, which is the midship balcony. But the club balcony rooms are a little bit larger in size, a little bit larger decks outside. So, once again, sometimes I'll secure 5 club balconies and 15 midship balconies. But if you prefer an inside cabin or a cabin with a window, once again, I can request those at the time of your booking and move them into my group block.
Perfect. Perfect. How about the rooms? I know you gave a little bit of a description of what they're like, but do they have fridges and do they have safes to lock up your passport and stuff?
Both cruises, depending on which, either one that you go on, have the fridges and also have the safes.
Oh,
just
perfect.
like many hotel rooms all have the safes today as well. That's pretty standard.
Perfect. And Richard, as far as meals go, are all the meals included on a cruise, or is it?
Now, on both kinds of cruises, all your meals are included. On a river cruise, basically you have your one dining room, one large dining room, and then you have your chef's table restaurant. And so everyone will dine all 3 meals in the dining room, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And even when we're out touring on a river cruise, basically, they generally bring you back for lunch. You're not forced to come back. If you want to stay in one of the cities that we're in out touring, you can do that. But they always make arrangements so you have your meal back on the ship. And I should say, one of the other big differences between river cruising and big ship cruising is river cruising is as close to an all-inclusive as you can buy. So when you see the price, everything's included, all your meals, all your shore excursions. When you leave the ship, your bill may only be 20 euros or something, because the currency on the river cruises in Europe on board is in euros, and on big ship cruises, it's US dollars within Norwegian Cruise Lines or Oceania. But very little to pay for. There are a few optional on river cruises that you might want to do, but that would be maybe 1 or 2 choices on a complete week-long itinerary for you to do extra, but everything's included, those meals. Now, on a big ship cruise, once again, all your meals are included, but not all your restaurants. So on a big ship cruise, like Norwegian, some of the larger ships have upwards of 20 restaurants. Some of the smaller ones still have a dozen restaurants. And of the restaurants, there'll be 3 that are included complimentary. Your Manhattan dining room, your Taste and Savor is often the other choices for names. And then there's the big buffet restaurant with all your cook stations, etc. Now, like your, Le Bistro, your French restaurant, your Italian restaurant, your seafood restaurant, any of these other restaurants that are on the big ships, once again, will be an additional charge for you to go on them. Now, I will say that with group travel, once again, we always secure part of our package is we get some additional restaurants. So what we do on the big ship cruises is that we will include, you'll get, depending on the length of the cruise, you'll get 2 or 3 of the other restaurants that you can go to during your cruise. But the other difference when it comes to meals, river cruising, every day there'll be our full activity list of all the things that are included, the beautiful walking tours or driving tours in a motor coach or bike tours that you can do along the rivers. And generally there's a time for breakfast, and it'll be about an 1.5-hour time slot for each of the meals. So yes, you can still come down when you want, but it's a more fixed meal category. Once again, there'll be menus to choose from, items to choose from on the menu. And on river cruises, the menu changes daily, inspired by where we're staying for the night on the ship or where we're passing. The same as the wines will change daily, because once again, that's probably a question that's coming up as well. On a river cruise, all your meals include free-flowing wine and beer, and every night before dinner, there's a sip and sail for an hour before we go down to dinner. And once again, every evening, there's entertainment on a river cruise, all included in that price. So basically, there's very little to pay for. back to the big ship cruising, like I said, some of the restaurants you'll need to pay for. We will include some as a group. But the other thing, anytime that we get a package of included specialty restaurants, so when you see some of the advertising, take 5 free, and the 5 free might be specialty restaurants, it might be shore excursions, a beverage package, all of those kind of things cost money on a big ship. Because we're traveling in a group, I often get those included complimentary, but with complimentary, you still got to pay the gratuities on all that. So you might get a few things free, but the gratuity bill could be $300 or $400 on those free items. So, I always say you need to keep that in mind when you're planning a big ship cruise, is that, yes, you get a great cruise, you'll get the meals included, but if you want a beverage package, then there's an additional charge. It's usually around $100 per day on a big ship to have a beverage package. So when we get it included, that's a nice amenity for free, and all you really need to pay is the gratuities. The same as if I get 2 or 3 of the specialty restaurants included in my package for you. Once again, we'll need to pay the gratuities on those specialty restaurants. Those are just things to keep in mind, that with river cruising, you pretty much know what your vacation is going to cost before you leave home. On a big ship cruise, you get your cruise and your meals, but other than that, drinks are going to cost you money unless we get one of the free packages for the drinks. The additional restaurants will cost you money, and every day when you get off the ship to do a shore excursion, you will choose and pick your shore excursions and pay accordingly. So, when you compare the two, they often may be the same price at the end. But going into it, with the river cruise, you know exactly what your vacation is going to cost, with the exception of a few trinkets and a few additional meals should you arrive a few days early or stay a few days later at the end, because we normally add pre and post land stays onto the river cruises, because if we're going to Europe, often we might as well see those beautiful places while we're there and stay longer than the 1 week. But with the river cruises, or with the big ship cruises, you're going to be adding all of those amenities on as you go through each day, and you will have a sizable expense when you get off the ship if you do anything extra. And once again, entertainment on the large ships are included. That have some stuff that is a cost, maybe, because one of the great things about Norwegian cruise lines is they have, New York style shows, some of the best entertainment at sea. This year you have one of the choices on some of the ships is like Kinky Boots, Jersey Boys, a number of other Broadway style shows, which will be included, but there might be a Cirque du Soleil show that is an additional cost. And you'll see all of those when you prior to going. We lead you through the process. Generally, I have either a meeting at some point for us all to get together and go over, what our choices are each day, so that we can decide what we're doing on these trips.
Okay. And do we need to make dinner reservations, Richard? And do we have like assigned tables for our group, or do we just go do our own thing?
Well, that is another great question. One of the things I love about Norwegian Cruise Lines and Oceania is the fact that you don't need to have dinner reservations, nor are you assigned a table for your whole cruise. Early days of cruising on a lot of the cruise lines is that you were given a dinner time and a table, and that was your table for the whole cruise. So you could be seated with people you didn't know or you didn't want to be with. With Oceania and with Norwegian more specifically, they are famous for the first ones to get freestyle cruising, which means you arrive at the restaurant, you have a table for 2 if there's 2 traveling together, etc., etc. And once again, if there's not a table ready, they will give you a device to tell you when your table's ready. Very much like regular everyday life. One of the things that I have found that people love on the group cruising, because that first cruise that I talked about going to Alaska with my group, I found that people did enjoy dining together. And because we're a group, they allow me to actually make reservation times. So what I did on that particular trip is I had reservations for early part of the evening and later in the evening, depending on if you wanted to dine early or late. And what I said on that trip is I'm dining late every night. So if you want to dine with me, choose the later time. And so what we did is everyone kind of split up and went early and late. Now, on other cruises, I've done everyone around the same time. And I don't believe in large tables, even when we go out to dinner here at home, because all it does is slow down service. So I always say to the cruise lines, when we book us as a group, I don't like tables that are larger than 6 or 8. So every night we would go down and we would circulate and get to know one another, and they loved it. And in fact, I've found since then that very few people stray from the organized dinners because they do their own thing during the day and love to get together and tell their stories at night and get to meet other people. So, what I do on the big ship cruises, I do arrange dining time, but it's your vacation. And I always say to people, if you have a particularly evening where you don't want to spend with other people, or you want to be romantic with your traveling partner, just let me know and I'll cancel your seats at our tables and release them back. So that's worked out really well. And the solos seem to love that because they know they're not going to be dining alone, and they'll join everyone as well. Now on the river cruises, once again, no need for dinner reservations. But as I said, there's a designated time around the full itinerary you have every day. Because with river cruises, as I said, breakfast is included usually by 9 or 9:30. There's tours offered. You're either sailing these beautiful rivers in the afternoon or morning. So if you were sailing in the morning, then the afternoon you'll be out doing tours. And then when you get back around supper time, it's a quick change into your evening outfit and down for dinner, and you don't want to miss the entertainment after dinner. So I always say, usually you're dining between 7 and 9 in the evening, and then enjoying the entertainment after that. And once again, we try to, as a group, we'll hold some tables. If you go down early, you'll grab a table, and then I'll grab a table, because we all seem to really enjoy being together and getting to know one another. But once again, it's not mandatory. It's your vacation, and it should be your way.
That sounds really fun, and it's nice to know that even though you're in the middle of a big cruise, you're part of a group, and you always have your companions around if you choose to spend the time with your companions. So it's really nice.
And it's worked out really well for me, because what happens is everyone becomes friends, and then they're all saying, where are we going next?
Yes.
And so that's how we sort of choose our next cruise itinerary, is that you lead me to where, I have a lot of the world I want to see before I'm finished on this earth. And so I host a couple trips each year, and it's worked out that a lot of what I've been hosting has been river cruises. So we encourage you tour directors as well, if there's places you want to go, let's build an itinerary around you and your following companions that like to follow you wherever you want to go. But I've certainly introduced a lot of our regular travelers to cruising now, and they seem to enjoy it very much as well. And talking about meals there, the other thing that often comes up is dress code. And, I'm worried about that, because my early days of cruising back before that trip to Alaska hosting a group is that, you all got dolled up for dinner with suit and tie, and you went down like you're going to a wedding or a ball, and you'll still see people getting dressed up. But river cruising, because you're out walking and doing tours, and it's more of a cleanup for dinner as opposed to getting dressed up for dinner. You'll see people put on nice outfits, but it's really resort casual. I'll put on a nice pair of dress pants and a golf shirt. And the same with choosing Norwegian cruise lines, when they got away from the typical big ship ballroom style dining. Because with Norwegian, they have their restaurants located all around the ship. And a lot of the restaurants may only hold 100 people. So it's like, going to a hometown. They can accommodate everyone, but it's not all in one big dining space. So once again, I'm very comfortable in a golf shirt and a pair of dress pants. And I don't even bother taking a sports jacket with me anymore. That's just my personal choice.
Oh, that's good. That was my next question, wondering if we would have to dress up for dinner. So
I found a lot of deterrent for a lot of our guests. Coming from the Annapolis Valley and Wolfville area, that's where I grew up, and a number of my cruising regulars come from there, and they've been farmers their whole lives. And in lots of cases, the wives were more interested in getting dressed up, but the men didn't really want that formal attire. They've worked hard and saved enough money to go on these vacations. They wanted to be comfortable. So I say, be comfortable. and you're absolutely not feeling like you're out of place. And, on my first river cruise, I was, is it going to be a pretentious kind of experience? Absolutely not. I mean, it's very down to earth, very comfortable. All day long, you're going to see people in sneakers and shorts, because unlike a lot of typical tours, a lot of them are nice, slow-paced walking tours where you're out exploring these beautiful European cities and walking about the cobblestone streets, or you're driving on a motor coach for a short drive and then getting off and still seeing things outside. So you want comfortable walking shoes and comfortable attire for sure.
Good. Richard, you talked about beverage packages and stuff, but what about like soft drinks, water, juice, things like that? Are they included, or do you have to pay extra for those?
Well, once again on a river cruise, all of that stuff is included. The only drinks that wouldn't be included on a river cruise is after dinner. So if you went to the lounge after dinner at night, or if you went to the lounge in the afternoon to have a drink, you'd need to pay for it, because with your meals, all your drinks are included, but I mean, as far as water and all of that's included on the river cruise. It's the same with, if you wanted to sleep in, there's always the extended breakfast that runs later in the morning. There's always the espresso machines to get yourself coffee. It's very much, I call it, it's like a big common living room on a river cruise that, it's like being in someone's home. It's just that kind of experience. It's very welcoming and everything is there, and they can't do enough for you. Now, going from 140 people to over 2,000 people on a large ship, there is a big difference in, how those kind of things are handled. But your unlimited beverage package that I include for all of the group tours on a large ship, that includes unlimited drinks and beverages, liqueurs. The only stipulation on the beverage package on a big ship is the magic number of $15. So anything over $15 US on the menu is not covered. The same as wine is included by the glass, but not by the bottle. Sodas and soft drinks are all included in that package. But if you're a person that doesn't drink, you can also get a soda package, but you have to pay for it. Water is accessible throughout. It's all safe to drink, but if you want bottled water, once again, you need to buy a bottled water package. So there are some packages. So all of those things are extra on a large ship cruise from the perspective, if you're going on your own. But in our packages, once again, I generally include one of the amenities that I choose is the unlimited beverage package. But if you don't drink, there's certainly an opportunity for you to have a package for sodas and waters as well. But those are a water package in bottled water is an extra charge. And once again, those drink packages, there's a gratuity package added onto them as well. And if you're traveling with someone else and one of you drinks and one doesn't drink, unfortunately, on a large ship cruise, the beverage package has to be taken by both people if you're sharing a cabin.
So if we're off on an excursion and we're in port somewhere, we're coming back on the ship, am I allowed to bring a bottle of wine onto the boat with me, or am I allowed to bring a bottle of water, or can I bring that stuff on board?
On a river cruise, you can bring as much as you want on board and even consume it on board. If next week when we're in Bordeaux, if you come across some nice bottles of wine, you bring them back, absolutely, you can have them on board. On a large ship, once again, you cannot bring any of your own alcohol on board. If you do, they will store it for you, is what they call it. And even if you put it in your suitcase, it won't be in your suitcase when it gets in your room. It will be already taken out with a card in there saying, we'll give it to you the night before you depart the ship. The same as if you buy some bottles when you were out. Once again, when you come back on the ship, they will store them for you until you go home. And you can't bring, you can't go and bring, a case of pop back on or any of that kind of stuff on a big ship.
Okay. Interesting. Is there Wi-Fi on board? And if there is it included?
Once again, Wi-Fi is complimentary on the river cruises. It's all complimentary. Now, I always say, when you're floating down a river from country to country, sometimes it can be sporadic. But once again, it's all included at no charge in the price that you're paying. On a big ship, once again, one of the amenities that I often include for everyone is the Wi-Fi package, but it depends on, each year. Some of the amenities change for group tours, but through 22 and into 23 right now, we're getting 5 amenities included with I should say 4 amenities included, and the ability for me to choose a 5th. And the 4 amenities I normally go with is a specialty restaurant, the beverage package, the Wi-Fi package, and like I said, the free shore excursion package is what I've been choosing for our tours in 22 and 23. The Wi-Fi package is quite limited. The free one, it's maybe 75 minutes of time, but there are a wide array of packages that can be purchased. But just remember, when you've got a small town in the same facility, it's like old dial-up. I find it's very slow to access things, but you can buy enhanced services based on how much you're willing to pay on board the ship.
Okay, and how about my cell phone? How does that work?
Cell phone, once again, most of us, when we get to varying stops is when we use our cell phones, but that's really tied to your carrier at home. So your carrier at home, you tell them you're going on a cruise, what kind of a package do you have for me? They've gotten better every year. And once you get far enough out to sea and you're in open water, then you're working off of the satellites as opposed to a cell tower. So depending on where you're cruising, when I was doing my Alaska cruise up the coast of BC, lots of times I would have service simply because I was off next to a community that was close enough to reach a tower. But once again, you can come up with a cell package through your own carrier. Just ask them, like you should on any vacation, I'm going here or there. I know that mine is really simple now in the fact that with TELUS, who I'm with, if I turn my phone on a given day, I'll be charged a certain dollar amount per day. And if I decide the next 3 days I'm at sea, I'm not going to turn it on. I wouldn't be charged for those days. But every plan is a little bit different, but that's who you need to check with.
Okay. What about like power adapters and cords and curling irons, hair dryers, things like that?
Well, the European ships, the river cruises, you'll need an adapter, and we'll give you advice on that, which adapter to have, depending on where we're going and which ship we're going to. But you'll need that to plug in your devices. But I always, I have a CPAP machine, so I never find that the cord's long enough to go where I need it. So I always carry an extension cord and adapter in my suitcases. Those are just good things to remember. On river cruises, you can't have irons. You can't have curling irons or those kind of things. On big ship cruises, you can't have irons either. They'll be confiscated, given them to you back at the end as well. But you can get an iron on a big ship, brought to you to be used from the ship itself. And curling irons are allowed on big ships generally.
Okay. You mentioned your CPAP machine. What about medical devices? Is there any issues?
Well, once again, those are always good things to tell us when you're booking, because we'll set you right up from the start. If you have a CPAP machine for sleep apnea, then we'll make arrangements to have distilled water put in your room, and that would be the same with both types of cruising, river or big ship.
Okay. And Richard, the things that are not included, like I know on the riverboat, they are included, but say if I was on a big ship and there's things that aren't included and I want this and I want that, how do I pay for all that? Do I bring my Visa card around, or do I prepay you, or what do I do?
No, I always say on a river cruise, there's not really anything to pay for except for the gift shop and a few odd drinks, which would be charged to your room. So it doesn't matter if you're on a river cruise or a big ship. On a river cruise, you could at least pay for it if you wanted to. On a big ship, when you check in for your cruise, everything will be tied to your credit card, and everything on the ship is tied to your room key. Your ID on the ship. So basically, it's a cashless world on a big ship cruise. Everything kind of like Disney, and the perspective is everything is charged to your card. You will actually see that bill the day before you check off the cruise ship. So with the exception of the casino, would be the only spot you would use cash. But every meal if you go to a specialty restaurant that's not included in charges, then you would be charging it to your room, and be settled. And in your room, in order to get on the ship, is tied to your credit card. So you've already agreed to pay that before you get on, and you would just double check the bill before you get off the ship. The night before, you'd make sure everything's in order, and that would be all processed on your credit card.
Okay. Speaking of money and paying for things, like, do I need to get foreign currency for all the different countries that we're going to visit? Or
Well,
is
I
there an easy
recommend
thing?
credit cards to pay for most things, but
Okay.
in Europe, I mean, most of the countries are on the euro, so I always recommend having a few euros before you go. Certainly on cruises, I mean, US is the currency on board, and when you get off at most of the islands in the Caribbean or varying places, once again, it can often be US dollars, but that's only if it's North American cruising. If you're going somewhere else, then you may need some local currency, but I always recommend just getting it when you're off the ship for the little bit that you need. At either a bank or taking a few with you. On a big ship, they will do some currency exchange for you, but it's not it's not cheap to do it that way. You're better
Okay.
off with the banking machines as opposed to on the ship itself, and they don't have large amounts of it. But I mean, most of the tourist areas, if you go to the Caribbean islands, I mean, they pretty much take your US dollar, and once again, you'll get some exchange. But in Europe, most of the countries are on the euro, and the euro, and we'll accept that as well.
Okay. Um, and how about the shore excursions? Do we book those in advance and pay for them in advance? And what if we don't want to do a shore excursion? Are we allowed to just stay on board?
Well, I guess there's two different answers to that. On the river cruises, all your excursions are included. They usually ask us to book it a few months up to a certain number of days before we go, so they have an idea of who wants to do what. But in the morning, if you get up and you don't want to do it on a river cruise, you just don't go. They're all included at no charge. If you decide you want to stay on board and just rest for the day, you do that. On a big ship cruise, once again, none of the excursions are included free. So you'll be choosing before you go, or you'll be booking while you're on board. I always recommend, if you're doing a big ship cruise, you've got 2,000 or 3,000 people all wanting to do the same kind of excursion. So anything that's really important to you, you should pre-book them for sure. So you're guaranteed to be not disappointed in all the things you want to see. And the good thing about pre-booking them, because you're booking from Canada and I've booked everything in Canadian dollars, prior to going, you'll pay in Canadian. Once you're on the ship, it'll be charged in US. So anything you pre-book on our big ship cruises with Norwegian, right now I'm starting to book some stuff for my Greek Isles cruise in September. And, once again, they're all booked and paid for in Canadian dollars before I go.
So really, when they call to book with Atlantic Tours, all of this will be offered to them and go.
We'll go over all the details and tell them this is the time you should start looking at your excursions and choosing your excursions and getting yourself ready for the cruise. So we'll help you through the process. You'll still book the excursions yourself and choose them, and they'll be charged to your credit card before you go. And depending on the excursion, most of the excursions still have up to a certain number of hours or days prior to cancel with no penalty on the big ship cruises. So, to me, once again, if you decide to spend a couple days, I mean, a lot of ports now are being repeated for me. So when I go to the Caribbean, do I need to get off for the fourth time in St. Martin or St. Lucia? Sometimes I just choose to have a day on ship while everyone else is off, and I go up and lay on the sun deck and do that kind of stuff. But I tend to want to be with my guests, so I often repeat the shore excursion just because people will say to me, Richard, which shore excursion are you going to do? And so I will have most of the people choose the same one that I choose. So once again, I try to find out which one they want, and then I just go along with them so I can make sure that I'm kind of a mother hen in that way, looking after everyone and making sure that they're all back on time and those kind of things. But once again, it's your vacation. You can choose what to do. We're there to help you through the process for sure.
That's really nice, like with the hosted cruise part, to know that
And
you're
I
not
noticed,
going.
Donna, we're getting close to the end of our time. So maybe one of the things that I should, we'll go through the cruises that we have coming up quickly, and then we'll finish
Okay,
off with a few more questions, if that sounds good to
sure.
you, unless
Yeah,
there's
we've
some
got some
pressing ones that
questions
I
there.
didn't, is there something pressing that you wanted me to cover off before we?
No, we can go over the rest of the questions, and people have sent questions in as well, so we can answer those
Yeah,
as we go through them.
I see some chatting going on there
Yeah.
as well. So with that said, like I said, I'm leaving next week for Bordeaux, so we didn't include that one here. But we're starting off with our big ship cruises. We have a Greek Isles going this September that leaves on September 19th. And when we're going to do a pre-land in this case, we're going to do some nights in Rome before we get on the ship. And then we'll do our cruising and fly home at the end. So if you're interested in that, we still have some spaces available. And like I said, September of this year, and you see Santorini, Athens, Mykonos, Corfu. I won't go through the list. It's located here. And that's a good size group. We have about 35 to 40 people on that one. And another one that I'm hosting this year, and it's the first time I'm going to be away for Christmas and the holidays, is, and this came out of the cruises canceling the last few years. We had planned to go last year on the repositioning cruise from New York to New Orleans again, and weren't able to go. It ended up, we needed to cancel. So everyone was saying, well, where are we going to use these credits? And they needed to be used before the end of 2022. So I said, well, what about if we went away for Christmas? So December 22nd, on the beautiful Norwegian Encore, we're going to fly down to Miami, spend a night in Miami. Like I said, I like to get there in case we have any weather issues. The next day, we're going to do a 12-day cruise of the Caribbean, and we'll be away for Christmas and New Year's, and we're doing the ABC Islands, Aruba, Carousel, and Bonaire, St. Lucia, a beautiful island, Antigua, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and then Puerto Plata before going back to Miami. And we have 2 days at sea leaving and a day at sea coming back. So I enjoy the days at sea often because it gives you a little rest. The thing with cruising, the itineraries are so full that you want to do everything and you never get those days to just enjoy the ship. So nothing wrong with taking a day just to enjoy the ship. So that's Christmas of this year. We'd love to have you join us, and so it'll be great fun. And then in 23, this has just come together this week. We had the cruise book, but we were waiting for air flights to open up. And so February 25th, we're going to fly to Hawaii, do a week on Waikiki for 1 week, sort of rest and a chance to explore a bit before we get on the cruise for a week and do the varying islands with Norwegian again, and then we'll fly back. So in total, it'll be a 15-day getaway. And then there's the Southern Caribbean Gems. This is with Oceania Cruise Lines. And Oceania, as I said, is the premium brand for Norwegian cruise lines. Their largest ship is only 1,200 people, and most of their ships are 600, 700, 800 people. So it's a very different size group on those ships. And as you can see, once again, the ABC islands, I should say the A and B, Carousel and Bonaire. Aruba's not in this one, but you'll see Grenada, St. Lucia, Guadeloupe, Dominican, Barbados, and St. Vincent. And then one of the favorites, the Snowfly Bermuda. You asked me about that. And this is for people that don't like to fly. So we're leaving Halifax, going down to Maine to spend the night. We'll go down to Boston, get on the ship, and go over to Bermuda. And when we're done our cruise back in Boston, we'll come back to Bangor and back to Halifax. So that's why we call it a no-fly. We're going down by motor coach and back by motor coach. But Bermuda is a great island. I'm leaving in May of this year to go over. Our group ended up canceling for this year. They didn't want to take the risk back in the beginning part of the new year with COVID. So we rolled the departure to next year. But I said, I need to go somewhere. So I'm going regardless. So I am going this year in May. And I will be hopefully, or one of us will be with this group next year. And another trip that we have coming up on big ship is, once again, it's Oceania, so it's a small ship, it's the Marina, and we're going to do the legendary Baltic out of Southampton, UK. And this just changed yesterday, because this was the itinerary that was going to Russia and all of that, and I wondered what we would do with this in the future. And so they've changed this whole cruise. It's mostly it's Scandinavia now, so it'll be a great itinerary for next June. Once again, we'd love to have you joining us. And I don't have all the details yet because, as I said, I just got it yesterday. I'm waiting for the pricing now. So that will be changed on our website. Now to our river cruises. In August, I'm hosting the Enchanting Rhine, the Rhine River of Europe. Absolutely stunning. I just did this in 2019. I did it the opposite direction. This time we're going into Switzerland, doing Zurich, Lucerne, and then getting on the ship in Basel and ending up in Amsterdam. Still some spots on that for anyone that's interested. And then in October, a river cruise again. This one is the Gems of Southeast Europe, the exotic Lower Danube. And this was an extension for those that did the other end of the Danube with me a number of years ago, and they always wanted to finish it. So we're going to begin in Romania and end up in Austria. So we're going to do a pre-land on this one and a post-land. So we're doing 2 nights in Bucharest, 2 nights in Brasov, which that's where Dracula's castle is located. We'll get on the ship, go through the Iron Gates, and then end up in Budapest, Hungary, and then on to Vienna for 2 nights post before we come back. Still seats left on that one as well. And the other river cruise that's coming up in 23, I'm looking so forward to, is the Christmas markets, all those beautiful Christmas markets in Europe. And there'll be an option for a pre-Prague 3-night cruise before we get on in Nuremberg and end up in Vienna on this one, doing all those famous Christmas markets. And so that kind of concludes the river cruising end of things. Donna, let's look at the chat box. I know there was some things in there. And it's been a whirlwind today. Someone's asked about booklets. All of our cruises are located on our website. We do have a flyer of some of our trips, but once again, our brochures, we kind of did away with the last couple of years during the pandemic, and the most up-to-date details on atlantictours.com. Do you have insurance to offer? Yes, we do. We can sell Manulife Insurance is our preferred supplier of insurance. And there's also a link on our website if you're from outside of Nova Scotia where you can actually get a quote on insurance itself, or Peggy or Stephanie in reservations would be happy to answer those questions. Is tipping included in the price was another question. When we do our river cruises and our big ship cruises, we always include the gratuity in your pricing. So I always say, when you're comparing our pricing to someone else that might be out there advertising, we don't do all those add-ons later. So when you see a price for a big ship cruise with Norwegian, it's going to have the gratuities already prepaid, included in your price for all the staff on the ship. Those free meals that I talked about and beverage packages, etc., all of those gratuities are included in the price. A lot of people will give you a price and then there's all these gratuities on top of it. So basically in our pricing, we include all of that. And on our river cruises, we also include the gratuities for the staff on those. The only gratuities that we don't include on either cruise would be on your shore excursions, because we don't know necessarily which one you're going to take. So if you're in Europe doing one of the great river cruises and get off and have a local guide, they recommend €2 per person a day. So, we recommend you carrying a few euros in your pocket for the driver and for your tour guide. And once again, on the big ships, depending on which excursions you choose, it would be customary to give them a gratuity. But all the gratuities that we can include for both the ship staff, your waiters, your bartenders, all of that are included.
There's a question here, Richard, too, about people concerned with people with mobility problems. Would that be an issue on a cruise?
Once again, with knowledge, we can handle a lot of those issues. On the river cruises, we can organize a wheelchair for you. They have walking sticks and canes on river cruises as well. They also have varying degrees of tours. So your walking tours, they have a slower pace, a medium pace, and a higher paced excursions, which is designated based on your mobility. On the big ship cruises, once again, I can arrange for a scooter or wheelchair to be available on the ship to make your experience easier. When we fly as a group, once again, I'd organize someone to have the transportation available at your gates to get you to the next gate, all of those kind of things. But the sooner we know, the better, because there's limitations on how many rooms, especially on the larger ships, that are wheelchair accessible.
Perfect.
I think we've gone a little overtime now to Donna. So thank you very much for listening today, everyone. Thank you, Donna, for being part of this. We have one more tea at 3 coming up for this season before we stop for the spring and summer, and then we'll reconvene hopefully back in the fall. And it's Donna again. Donna's going to be with you on April 27th for the last one of the season. I'm going to be in Europe still on that nice cruise. So you'll be in good hands with Donna. Remember, if you listen in, she's going to talk about our Maritime Province tours. Those are the tours that we do weekly throughout New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. And you'll learn all about the fact that we're local experts. So April 27th, 3 p.m. at the same time. And thank you all once again for joining us. And if you have any questions, reach out to me anytime here at Atlantic Tours. And Peggy and Stephanie and Reservations will answer your questions as well. So thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you on a cruise sometime soon.
Thank you.